Alright, this is my part 2 of my individual case study on the Republic of Cameroon. This is going to be over Cameroon's current events over the past within a couple of years. So here are the story titles. Cameroon on the brink of civil war as English speakers recount unbearable horrors. This is by the New York Times. U.S. reduces military aid over human rights, also by New York Times. And then Cameroon has an election Sunday, and everyone already knows the winner. This is by the Washington Post. So moving on to our first news and current event, the civil war in Cameroon. Well, the country is on the brink of civil war. Why? Well, the neglection of the English-speaking regions by the government. They only make up 20% of the language, the English does, compared to 80% is French and other languages. So they're a minority. They're tired of being politically and economically discriminated. They're also tired of French-speaking judges and admins, and unpaved roads and other things like that. They're overall being neglected compared to French regions. They want to create a new country called Ambazonia. This is their flag, you can see right here. It's unofficial, but they're declared. They're the separatists. This segregation of English and French is mainly due to the colonial past with the France, Britain, and Germany, the League of Nations mandate, where France got most of the land, so most of the people are French-speaking. And then we also have Britain and Germany. They got some too, so it was split up unevenly. Sorry about that. And then also the corruption of the government and military force, also known as the human rights abuses. I can go into more detail about that in the next slide. But we'll move on to who. So the countries and groups. The U.S. is involved with this because they help aid the military for Cameroon, as well as other supplies, but mainly military. Boko Haram, which is an Islamic extremist terrorist group. They have been targeting African countries for a while, mainly Nigeria, but it's also been affecting Cameroon a lot. Then we have people, Paul Biya, which is obviously he's the president. He's been president for over 36 years now. And Derek Woteva Wambo, he's not really as important much as a figure as much as he's an example. He is the chief of Buea, which is an English-speaking city. He has to deal with all the deaths and firefights and just the chaos of the civil war that's been going on between the military and the separatists in these English-speaking regions. Other important aspects of this, this affects the economy. What I mean by that is the English-speaking regions, they make up a fifth of the population, and they play a significant role in contributing to the economy. They have palm oil, rubber, and banana plantations. I mean, who doesn't like bananas? And the last person is Issa Bakari, who is the communications minister, he claims that they investigate all the allegations that they hear about of the human rights abuses and things of that sort. So I guess we'll move on to that. So the reduction of military aid between Cameroon and the U.S. Well, they're reducing and postponing military aid to Cameroon. Why are they doing that? Well, it's most likely because of human rights abuse. This is mainly towards Anglophones, which are the English-speaking group of Cameroon, and also due to the separatist rebellion. It's really hard to tell apart between the Anglophones that stay in these regions or are forced to stay in these regions, the civilians, and the separatists who control these regions because they're rebelling. So who is involved? Well, the U.S., Defense Department and State Department, the Cameroonian elite counterterrorism force, as well as the Cameroonian government, and the Anglophone civilians. So the U.S. State Department, which is led by General Waldhauser, he is the African command leader, and he claims that the U.S. military has provided training on law and war ethics. So they claim that they've done that, as well as the government and the Cameroonian elite counterterrorism force also claims that the U.S. military has nothing to do with these human rights abuses that's been popping up. I won't go into much detail about the abuse, because that's not very important to what I'm trying to explain. You can go use the links in the description to read about those more, but basically it's just unlawful killings and ransoms and just human rights abuse, basically. So moving on, people involved, General Waldhauser, like I said, he's the African command leader, and the obviously again the president of Cameroon, Paul Biya. So important aspects, all of this abuse, this pushes the civilians to support the rebellion force, or force them to flee. 90% of all civilians within all of the English-speaking regions have fled, and the 10% stay either being forced to or are separatists. This also affects the economy big time, as these regions are being shut down to try and stop the government from corruption from the rebellion. Also, the suspension of training and supplies creates a rift between America and Cameroon. This is the most important part. We've been a particularly strong ally with Cameroon, and we've used them in the fight against terrorism. So this is going to create a rift between us, but we don't really know what's to expect out of it. Maybe we're trying to push Cameroon to try and get rid of this corruption. And moving on to corruption of the Cameroonian election, Cameroon's president is serving his 7th term as of 2018. Why is this? Well, the electoral system is corrupted, even though on paper it shouldn't be. It's a presidential system, but the other politicians that run against Paul Biya for the past 7 terms have basically just been running against each other, knowing Paul will win. So obviously Paul Biya is the main person involved with this. He is the current president, which is in favor of the French-speaking, and he kind of neglects the English-speaking regions. which is why the civil war has been brought up in these corruption in the military to the civilians has been a big problem, is because he neglects a lot of it. Um, Important aspects. This is an authoritarian regime, so basically, he is always going to win his elections. If you disagree, you disappear. Let's see. Seems like it is due to the coup in 1984, when he was almost overthrown by his own guards, because of people trying to revolt against him. This could be bad for Cameroon if he doesn't change his own ways, if he doesn't realize what's happening, if he doesn't act upon it. These certain things, not just being in favor of the French, but if he doesn't help out, it actually has already been bad. There's war crimes and rebellion and terrorism all throughout Cameroon. There's no real way to stop this authoritarian regime. The separatists are kind of really doing it in vain. It's really hard unless he somehow changes his ways or gets booted out of office, probably due to death because he's in his mid to late 80s. Here are my sources for the 3 articles that I used. My overall clarity on Cameroon and these events, it doesn't look very good. I can understand why these separatists are revolting. There's been corruption, neglection, killings of unarmed protesters, all kinds of things, killing of innocent civilians in gunfights and firefights. There's just a lot of corruption going on, as well as in the government, the election, not just the military. So it doesn't look very good, as we also reduce the military supplies that we give to Cameroon, even though they don't use it for war crimes or for anything besides the fight against terrorism, which is good. But that is all that I have for this.